On a treacherous, winding road in rural Pine Creek, where the vibrant hues of autumn painted the forest in breathtaking shades of amber and gold, Haley Moore, a compassionate and skilled wildlife rehabilitator, embarked on her routine drive home. For 3 precious years, her life had been intertwined with that of Clover, a magnificent bobcat rescued as a vulnerable kitten. Sadly, Clover's early imprinting on humans had deemed her unable to return to the wild, forging an extraordinary bond with Haley. Little did anyone know the profound depths of their connection until that terrifying, fateful day. Suddenly, without warning, a wave of nausea washed over Haley, her vision blurring. A familiar, yet dreaded tingling sensation pulsed through her temples, the harbinger of an epileptic seizure she believed she had under control. Her body convulsed violently, her foot slamming down on the accelerator of her trusty blue Ford Ranger. The truck careened wildly, hurtling with terrifying speed toward the dense tree line. Recognizing the mortal danger with primal instinct, Clover, her golden eyes wide with alarm, sprang into action. With a desperate leap, she landed on Haley's lap, her sharp claws instinctively extending but carefully controlled. She pawed frantically at Haley's arm, a low growl rumbling in her chest. Miraculously, the frantic movements caused Haley's rigid leg to shift, easing the crushing pressure on the gas pedal. The truck began to slow, swerving erratically. But Clover's heroism was far from over. With astonishing focus, the bobcat stretched her lithe body upwards, placing her paws on the steering wheel. Using her powerful back legs for leverage, she pressed against the brake pedal. The vehicle decelerated further, but still drifted precariously. In a final breathtaking maneuver, Clover batted at the gear shift with her paw until it clicked into neutral. The truck shuddered and then gradually rolled to a stop, coming to rest against a small embankment of soft earth. Haley remained trapped in the throes of her seizure, her breathing shallow and ragged. Clover, her heart pounding, chirped anxiously, nudging Haley's face with her head, a behavior she had learned to monitor her beloved human during these terrifying episodes. But this time, they were utterly alone, on a desolate stretch of road, miles from any sign of help. Suddenly, Clover's sensitive ears twitched, catching the faint but approaching sound of an engine. With one last tender nuzzle against Haley's cheek, the brave bobcat turned. She pushed her weight against the driver's side door, which had swung partially open during the chaotic swerving, and with a powerful leap, vanished onto the roadside. What unfolded next defied all expectations, a testament to the extraordinary capacity for love and loyalty that can bloom between species. Sometimes, the most extraordinary heroes come cloaked in spotted fur and possess eyes of pure gold. This is the unbelievable true story of Clover, a remarkable bobcat who risked everything to save the life of the woman she loved. Before we delve deeper into this incredible tale, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming and inspiring stories. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you won't miss a single new upload. The late afternoon sun cast elongated shadows across the winding rural roads of Pine Creek. Haley Moore, her heart still pounding from the near-death experience, guided her weathered blue Ford Ranger along the familiar route home. The windows were cracked just enough to allow the invigorating crispness of the autumn air to mingle with the scent of pine needles. In the passenger seat sat Clover Haley's extraordinary companion, a 3-year-old bobcat with a coat of tawny, intricately spotted fur and perpetually alert, tufted ears. Most residents of Pine Creek were familiar with Haley's story, a dedicated wildlife rehabilitator with 2 decades of unwavering experience. She had selflessly nursed countless injured creatures back to health. But Clover was different. Discovered as a tiny days-old kitten beside her lifeless mother, a tragic victim of a hit-and-run on Highway 89. Clover had been far too young, her formative days too deeply imprinted by human care, to ever be safely released back into the wild. Through special permits and countless hours of patient training, Haley had become Clover's permanent guardian, an arrangement that had blossomed into a profound and unbreakable bond that neither could have possibly foreseen. Almost home, girl. Haley murmured, her voice still trembling slightly as she reached over to gently scratch behind Clover's velvety ears. The bobcat responded with a soft chirp, her mesmerizing golden eyes fixed intently on the blur of the passing landscape. At 38 years old, Haley lived a solitary life in a modest cabin nestled on 5 acres of tranquil woodland, bordering the vast expanse of the national forest. Her parents had passed away years prior, and her brother resided 3 states away with his own growing family. Her life was quiet, perhaps, but deeply fulfilling. Days spent tirelessly working at the Pine Creek Wildlife Rehabilitation Center she had painstakingly founded, and evenings shared with Clover and her small cherished menagerie of permanent resident animals, each bearing the scars of injuries or habituation that prevented their return to the wild. However, what few people in Pine Creek truly knew was that Haley had been diagnosed with epilepsy in her early 30s. Thankfully, her seizures were largely controlled through diligent medication and a carefully managed lifestyle. Yet the ever-present fear of breakthrough episodes lingered like a dark cloud. She was meticulous about taking her prescribed pills, adhering to a strict sleep schedule, and diligently avoiding her known triggers. It had been nearly 11 months since her last seizure, a stretch of normalcy that had allowed a fragile seed of hope to sprout within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, her condition was finally stabilizing. The first insidious warning arrived as she rounded a familiar bend in the road, a mere 4 miles from the comforting sanctuary of her cabin. A bizarre tingling sensation began to spread across her right temple, accompanied by a peculiar metallic taste that flooded her mouth. Haley felt her heart pound erratically in her chest. "No," she whispered, her voice laced with a rising tide of panic, instinctively scanning her surroundings. The road ahead stretched emptily, flanked by the dense, unforgiving embrace of the pine forest on both sides. There was no shoulder to pull onto, no houses offering a beacon of potential help. She pressed harder on the accelerator, a desperate gamble to reach the familiar turnout she knew was less than a mile ahead. But she never made it. The aura intensified with terrifying speed, flashing lights dancing in her peripheral vision, the unsettling floating sensation she had come to dread, the unmistakable precursor to a full-blown seizure. Her hands began to tremble uncontrollably on the steering wheel. "Clover." She managed to utter, her voice slurred and fading. "Clover." Then the world dissolved into a terrifying, chaotic darkness. Clover, ever vigilant, had been observing the subtle movements within the trees, a deeply ingrained habit passed down from her wild ancestors. But then she sensed the almost imperceptible shift in her beloved human. The bobcat's acutely honed senses registered the subtle alteration in Haley's scent, the erratic rhythm of her breathing, the almost invisible tremor that ran through her hands. Clover had witnessed these terrifying episodes before, though thankfully rarely and never within the confines of the rumbling truck. Then, with horrifying swiftness, Haley's body went rigid, convulsing violently. The truck lurched sharply, veering precariously towards the unforgiving embrace of the towering trees. Clover's powerful muscles tensed, her sharp claws instinctively extending, yet somehow, miraculously, she maintained control. The bobcat's mind, a fascinating tapestry, woven from wild instinct and the unique intelligence nurtured through her extraordinary upbringing, seemed to grasp the imminent danger with startling clarity. In a breathtaking flash of movement, Clover launched herself from the passenger seat, landing with surprising agility onto Haley's convulsing lap. The woman's right foot was pressed down with terrifying force on the accelerator, her hands no longer connected to the steering wheel. The truck continued its terrifying acceleration, bouncing roughly along the uneven edge of the road. Clover acted with what could only be described as remarkable presence of mind. With precise, deliberate movements, she nudged her compact body against Haley's tensed right leg, using her weight to push the rigid limb away from the pedal. As the crushing pressure eased, the truck began to lose its terrifying speed. Next, with astonishing determination, the Bobcat stretched her lithe body upwards, placing her front paws firmly on the steering column. Using her strong back legs for leverage against the seat, she pressed with surprising force against the brake pedal. The truck slowed further, but continued its dangerous drift. In a final, crucial, heart-stopping maneuver, Clover batted at the gearshift lever with her paw until it clicked into the neutral position. The vehicle shuddered and then gradually rolled to a complete stop, finally coming to rest against a small embankment of soft earth. Haley remained trapped in the violent throes of her seizure, her breathing labored and shallow. Clover, her own small heart pounding with fear, chirped anxiously, pawing gently at Haley's arm, licking her face with a tenderness she had learned helped to rouse her beloved human during these terrifying episodes. But this time was different. They were utterly alone on a seldom-traveled road with no sign of help anywhere in sight. Suddenly, Clover's sensitive ears swiveled, catching the faint but rapidly approaching sound of an engine in the distance. With one last tender nuzzle against Haley's unresponsive cheek, the brave Bobcat turned. She pushed her small but surprisingly strong weight against the driver's side door, which had swung partially open during the chaotic swerving, and with a powerful, desperate leap, vanished onto the roadside. Darlene Whitaker had called Pine Creek home for all of her 67 years. A beloved retired elementary school teacher, she now filled her days tending to her vibrant garden, volunteering at the cozy community library, and cherishing visits with her 4 adored grandchildren who lived in the next town over. She was returning from just such a visit, driving her sensible Subaru down the familiar stretch of Road 22, when she spotted something utterly unexpected on the road ahead. At first glance, she thought it might be a large stray house cat, perhaps even a fox venturing out in the late afternoon light. But as she drew closer, a gasp escaped her lips. She was looking at a bobcat standing resolutely in the middle of the road. Its tawny body was tense and alert, its piercing golden eyes fixed directly on her approaching car. "Good heavens," Darlene muttered under her breath, instinctively slowing her vehicle to a crawl. Wild animals in Pine Creek typically fled at the mere sight and sound of a car. This one, however, seemed to be deliberately placing itself in her path. She brought her Subaru to a complete stop about 20 feet from the enigmatic Bobcat. To her utter astonishment, instead of bolting into the safety of the surrounding woods, the animal turned and trotted several paces up the road. Then it stopped and looked back at her, its gaze unwavering. It repeated this bizarre behavior, moving forward a short distance, then pausing to look back, its actions conveying an almost unbelievable message. "It's as if it wants me to follow," Darlene whispered to herself, hardly daring to believe the incredible thought that had taken root in her mind. Cautiously, her heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and burgeoning curiosity, she inched her car forward. The Bobcat continued its strange procession up the road, leading her around a gentle bend. And then Darlene's breath caught in her throat. There, partially off the side of the road, sat Haley Moore's familiar blue pickup truck, the driver's side door hanging open at an awkward angle. The Bobcat darted towards the vehicle, and with a graceful leap, disappeared inside. Recognition flooded Darlene's face. "That's Haley's truck, and Clover, she exclaimed, her initial curiosity instantly morphing into a surge of profound concern. She pulled her Subaru over to the side of the road, and hurried towards the pickup, her heart pounding with a growing sense of dread. Inside the truck, she found Haley slumped precariously over the steering wheel, her body still and unresponsive. Clover was there too, nuzzling Haley's face with obvious distress, emitting soft, worried chirps and low guttural sound. Though the violent seizure had thankfully passed, Haley was trapped in the disoriented, post-ictal state that often follows. Confused, utterly exhausted, and not fully conscious of her surroundings. Haley, dear, can you hear me?" Darlene said, her voice filled with genuine concern as she reached for the younger woman's wrist, gently feeling for a pulse. It was rapid but thankfully strong. "It's Darlene Whitaker. I'm going to help you." Relief washed over her as she pulled her cell phone from her pocket, the signal indicator showing a reassuring 3 bars in this usually patchy stretch of road. As she swiftly dialed 911, her gaze kept returning to Clover, who watched her intently with those unblinking, intelligent golden eyes. Sheriff Tom Polson had known Haley since she was a little girl, a whirlwind of scraped knees and pockets overflowing with interesting rocks and feathers. He had wholeheartedly supported her dream of establishing the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, and had even navigated the complex permitting process alongside her when she sought to keep Clover. When the urgent call came in about a possible accident involving Haley, Tom responded personally, his patrol car arriving at the scene just minutes before the wailing sirens of the approaching ambulance. "She's coming around more now," Darlene explained, her voice still tinged with worry as Tom approached the damaged truck. "I think she had some kind of seizure." Tom nodded grimly, kneeling beside the open driver's door. "Haley, it's Tom. You're okay now." Haley's eyelids fluttered open, a veil of confusion clouding her still dazed eyes. "Tom, what? How did you—" "Your friend here brought help," Tom said gently, nodding towards Clover, who remained vigilantly at Haley's side, her gaze never leaving her human. "Darlene says that a cat of yours was standing right in the middle of the road, practically flagging her down." Haley's weak hand found Clover's soft fur, her fingers stroking the familiar coat with a gentle tenderness. "Good girl," she whispered, her voice still raspy. "Smart girl." The ambulance arrived moments later, the paramedics initially taken aback by Clover's unwavering presence. However, the Bobcat remained surprisingly calm, emitting only a low, protective growl when they attempted to gently separate her from Haley. "The cat stays with her," Tom informed them firmly, his voice brooking no argument. "This isn't the first emergency we've had with these two." As they carefully loaded Haley onto a stretcher, Tom's keen eyes noticed something on the dashboard. A small surveillance camera. Haley had installed it months earlier, a direct result of a troubling break-in at the rehabilitation center that had shaken her sense of security. If it had been recording, it might have captured the entire sequence of events, a silent witness to Clover's incredible heroism. Dr. Rachel Winters had been Haley's neurologist for the past 6 years, ever since her initial epilepsy diagnosis. Over time, their professional relationship had blossomed into a genuine friendship, forged over a shared passion for the delicate beauty of wildlife and the tranquility of the outdoors. When Haley was brought into Pine Creek Memorial Hospital, Dr. Winters was already waiting, her expression a mixture of concern and professional focus. "Your medication levels are a little low," she said gently after reviewing the initial blood work. "Have you been taking your medication regularly, Haley?" Haley, now fully conscious though, still feeling the lingering exhaustion of the post-ictal state, nodded weakly. "Every day, same time. But I've been pulling incredibly long hours at the center. We had 3 orphaned bear cubs come in last week, and I've been up through the night with them." Dr. Winters sighed, her brow furrowing with concern. "Sleep deprivation is a major trigger for you, Haley. You know this. I know. Haley whispered, her eyes filling with tears of fear and gratitude. I could have killed someone if Clover hadn't been there. Where is my furry guardian angel now? Tom took her home to feed her and check on the other animals, Dr. Winters reassured her. He said he'd bring her back tomorrow. Haley hesitated, a thought suddenly occurring to her. He also mentioned he got the footage from my dash cam. That Clover, actually, that she helped stop the truck. Dr. Winters raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, a hint of intrigued surprise in her eyes. Well, I would certainly like to see that. But honestly, Haley, I'm not entirely surprised. Animals are remarkably perceptive, especially ones as intelligent as bobcats. And Clover has a truly special bond with you. I've always taken care of her. Haley murmured, a wave of emotion washing over her. And now, she's taking care of me. The following afternoon, Haley was released from the hospital, her medication adjusted, and with strict doctor's orders to prioritize regular sleep. Tom picked her up, Clover safely secured in a large carrier in the back of his SUV. The bobcat chirped excitedly the moment she saw Haley pawing insistently at the carrier door. She's been quite agitated all morning. Tom chuckled as they drove towards Haley's cabin. Wouldn't eat a thing until I showed her you were okay on a video call. I'm so sorry you had to bobcat sit, Haley said, reaching back to slide her fingers through the carrier's wire mesh. Clover immediately rubbed against her touch, purring loudly, a deep rumbling sound, closer to a growl than a typical house cat's purr. No trouble at all, Tom replied, glancing at her in the rearview mirror, though I think your other critters were a bit jealous of all the attention she was getting. He paused for a moment. Oh, and I reviewed that dash cam footage. I've sent a copy to your phone, Haley. It's remarkable. That cat knew exactly what she was doing. When they arrived at the cabin, Tom helped Haley inside, then brought in Clover's carrier, opening it once they were both settled in the cozy living room. With a joyful cry, the bobcat bounded to Haley, climbing carefully onto her lap and pressing her head under Haley's chin, a gesture of profound affection and reassurance. I'll leave you two to rest, Tom said, placing a bag of groceries he'd thoughtfully picked up on the kitchen counter. Call if you need absolutely anything. Dr. Jeff is stopping by later to check on all your animals. He starts. After Tom left, Haley spent a long time simply holding Clover, the full weight of her near-death experience slowly sinking in. Finally, she reached for her phone and opened the video Tom had sent. The footage, surprisingly clear for a dash cam, showed the moment the seizure began. Her eyes widening in fear, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly before losing all coordination. Then Clover's swift and decisive action unfolded on the screen, and the incredible leap onto her lap, the focused push against her foot on the accelerator, the almost unbelievable maneuver of hitting the brake pedal and shifting the gears. The truck slowed, shuddered, and finally came to a stop against the soft embankment. The footage then showed Clover checking on Haley, nudging her face, before deliberately exiting the vehicle and positioning herself in the middle of the road, a furry sentinel waiting for help to arrive. Tears streamed silently down Haley's face as she watched the incredible recording. You saved my life, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, to the bobcat curled trustingly against her. You beautiful, brilliant girl. Dr. Jeff Werber had been the dedicated veterinarian for Pine Creek and the surrounding areas for over 20 years. He had known Haley since her teenage years, when she'd eagerly volunteered at his clinic, and he had become a trusted mentor and unwavering advocate for her ambitious wildlife rehabilitation work. When he arrived at her cabin that evening, he brought not only his medical bag, but also a warm, comforting meal prepared by his wife, Rose, from their local restaurant. Tom showed me the video. He said gently, as he carefully examined Clover more as a reassuring precaution than out of any real concern. The Bobcat tolerated his examination with an unusual degree of patience. In my 25 years of veterinary practice, Haley, I've honestly never seen anything quite like it. Do you think she really understood what was happening? Haley asked softly from her position on the sofa, where Dr. Jeff had insisted she remain seated while he tended to her animal family. Animals, especially predators like bobcats, possess an extraordinary level of situational awareness. Dr. Jeff explained, running his hands gently along Clover's spine. They are constantly processing information about their environment. Clover has spent nearly her entire life with you, Haley. She knows your normal behaviors. She recognizes subtle sounds, and she could likely detect the changes in your body chemistry when the seizure began. He paused, considering, but shifting gears, braking the truck. He smiled, a look of genuine wonder in his eyes. Bobcats are incredibly intelligent and remarkably adaptable. In the wild, they learn complex hunting strategies. In captivity, that intelligence gets redirected. Clover has watched you drive countless times. She's observed the patterns. What happens when you move the gear shift, when you press the pedals? In that critical life or death moment, she instinctively applied what she had observed. He finished his examination, giving Clover an approving scratch under her chin. She's perfectly fine, not even particularly stressed. He then turned his serious gaze to Haley. You, on the other hand, need rest. Rosa's sending over meals for the next few days, and I've arranged for volunteers from the center to handle the daily care duties. Haley started to protest, but Dr. Jeff held up a gentle hand. Doctor's orders. Both Dr. Winters and myself insist you take the time to fully recover. And Clover, he added, looking at the bobcat, who seemed to be listening intently, will undoubtedly keep a very close eye on you. As if understanding his words, Clover chirped softly and returned to Haley's side, settling protectively against her leg. Within days, the incredible dashcam footage had spread far beyond Tom and Dr. Jeff. Darlene, still deeply moved by what she had witnessed, had shared the unbelievable story with a few close friends in Pine Creek, and in the close-knit community, word traveled with astonishing speed. Soon, local news outlets picked up the story, and the video of Clover's heroic actions went viral, captivating hearts and minds across the internet. Haley, still recuperating at home, found herself inundated with an overwhelming flood of messages of support and a barrage of media requests for interviews. She politely declined, most overwhelmed by the attention, but agreed to a single exclusive interview with the Pine Creek Gazette, the small local newspaper that had championed her wildlife rehabilitation work from its very inception. I've always known Clover was special, Haley told Marion Hayes, the Gazette's seasoned journalist, as they sat together on her porch swing. Clover, lounging regally nearby on a handmade wooden platform. But what she did that day, it goes so far beyond special. People keep using words like miraculous and extraordinary, and they're absolutely right. Marion nodded thoughtfully, her pen poised over her notepad. Some experts are skeptical, though. She noted her tone, suggesting she wasn't among them. They argue that a wild animal wouldn't possess the cognitive ability to understand the complex mechanics of stopping a vehicle. Haley smiled gently, her gaze softening as she watched Clover intently tracking a monarch butterfly fluttering through the late afternoon air. Clover isn't fully wild, Marion, but she's not domesticated either. She exists in this unique space between two worlds. Maybe, maybe that's why she was able to do what she did. She understands both the natural world and the human one in a way that most animals don't. The poignant story ran on the front page of the Pine Creek Gazette the following Sunday, accompanied by a heartwarming photograph of Haley and Clover sitting together on the cabin porch, an unlikely pair bound by an extraordinary act of love. By Monday, national media outlets had picked up the captivating tale, and by Wednesday, Haley's small struggling wildlife rehabilitation center had received more generous donations than in the entire previous year combined. 3 months later, on a crisp winter morning, Haley stood before a small but heartfelt gathering at the Pine Creek Community Center. Her medication had been carefully adjusted, and she was adhering strictly to a healthy sleep routine. Thankfully, she had experienced no further seizures. Beside her sat Clover, unusually tolerant of the crowd, perhaps sensing the solemnity and importance of the occasion. "It is my distinct honor to present this year's Pine Creek Humanitarian Award," announced Mayor Eleanor Thompson, her voice filled with warmth and genuine emotion, "to a most unusual recipient. This prestigious award typically recognizes a human citizen who has demonstrated extraordinary compassion and care for others. This year, however, we make a very special exception for a truly exceptional individual." Haley stepped forward Clover, secure and comfortable in a specially designed harness. "Clover can't understand your kind words of praise or this beautiful plaque," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor of emotion that ran through her. "But she understands love, and she understands loyalty." She paused, her gaze dropping to the magnificent Bobcat at her side. "Those are the very qualities that saved my life that terrifying day on County Road 22. She glanced down at Clover, who looked back at her with those intelligent, knowing golden eyes. Clover reminds us that the bonds between species can be profound, life-altering, and utterly unbreakable. The work we do at the Pine Creek Wildlife Rehabilitation Center has always been about respecting and protecting the wild creatures with whom we share this precious land. Sometimes, she added, her voice thick with gratitude, as I learned in the most profound way imaginable, they protect us right back. Or the ceremony concluded with the unveiling of another heartwarming surprise. A significant grant from a national wildlife conservation organization specifically earmarked for the expansion of the Pine Creek Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. With these much-needed funds, Haley would finally be able to hire full-time staff, construct better facilities for the rescued animals, and ultimately help even more creatures in need. As people mingled afterward, enjoying light refreshments and casting careful, respectful glances at the now famous Clover Darlene Whitaker, approached Haley, a gentle smile gracing her kind face. "Haley, dear," the older woman said quietly, "I've been meaning to tell you something. That day, on the road, when I first saw Clover standing there, I almost didn't stop. I was running a bit late to pick up my prescription and seeing a wild animal in the road. Well, my first instinct was to simply drive around her and continue on my way." She reached out a weathered hand, not quite touching Clover, but gesturing towards her with a reverent air. "But there was something in her eyes, Haley. Such purpose. I've never seen anything quite like it before or since. Something in her gaze made me stop." Haley nodded, understanding completely the inexplicable connection that had led to her rescue. "That's the thing about the bonds between species, Darlene," she said softly. "We often think we're so different, so separate. But when it truly matters, those perceived differences just fall away. What remains is something so much simpler and so much more profound. Later that evening, as soft snowflakes began to fall outside the cozy cabin windows, Haley sat in her favorite armchair. Clover curled contentedly at her feet, the bobcat's deep purr a soothing rumble in the quiet room. Haley gently stroked Clover's spotted fur, a deep sense of peace settling over her. "You know," Haley murmured softly, her gaze lost in the mesmerizing patterns of the falling snow. "Before all of this happened, I sometimes wondered if keeping you was the right choice. If you wouldn't have been happier in a larger facility with more space, more stimulation." Clover blinked lazily up at her, her golden eyes half closed in contentment. "I don't wonder anymore." Haley continued, her voice filled with certainty. "I truly believe we found each other for a reason. You may not live in the wild, my beautiful girl, but you're not just a pet either. You're my friend, my family, my guardian angel." As if in gentle agreement, Clover stretched languidly, then resettled, pressing her warm body more firmly against Haley's legs. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in a serene hush of white. Inside, woman and bobcat remained together, an unlikely pair, bound by mutual rescue, unwavering mutual care, and a deep, unspoken understanding that transcended the arbitrary boundaries between their very different worlds. Valuable lesson for the audience. The extraordinary story of Haley and Clover serves as a powerful reminder of the profound and often underestimated connections that can exist between humans and animals. It highlights the incredible intelligence, adaptability, and capacity for loyalty that reside within the animal kingdom. Beyond that, it underscores the vital importance of empathy, compassion, and being open to the unexpected ways in which life can surprise us with acts of selfless heroism. Sometimes, the greatest acts of courage and love come from the most unexpected sources. We would love to hear your thoughts on this incredible story. Please share your comments below. And if you enjoyed this heartwarming tale, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of the human-animal bond. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Clover's heroic actions?